Hello everyone, and welcome to And Sleep. My name is Tommy Licatese. Today I have the pleasure of hosting clinical psychologist Dr. Sylvia Gindy. We will be discussing bedtime strategies and sleep. Welcome to the program, Dr. Gindy.
Thank you for having me.
So what is CBTI that you mentioned is beneficial for bedtime?
Well, in order to talk about CBTI, I think we first need to talk about what is CBT. CBT is an evidence-based form of psychotherapy that focuses on the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and how they're all interconnected. So CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, if we think about how that relates to sleep, we want to be talking about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is an evidence-based treatment that focuses how our thoughts and behaviors related to sleep influence how we sleep. The great thing about CBTI is that the effects are durable and they last over the long run, which is what I think makes it different from medication management. In CBTI, we're teaching patients real-world skills and strategies that help them improve their sleep. Now, one of the things we know about insomnia is that it's episodic. It can come back if we're faced with a stressor. So when patients undergo CBTI, they're able to apply those skills if and when the insomnia recurs, and they're able to treat themselves.
Interesting. So what are some of the areas of strategy that you would focus on when treating somebody with CBTI?
So in CBTI, it's a multi-faceted treatment approach. So we pull together a host of different strategies to help patients improve their sleep. First off, we're going to start with a sleep intake. This is where the patient comes in, and I want to get a really good sense of their history with insomnia, what started it, what's maintaining it, and what are some of the goals they have in terms of their sleep. Then once we've gotten that covered, we start doing some sleep tracking. We use an app to get a really close look at what's happening with their sleep and exactly how much sleep they're actually getting. Once we have some of that data, we're able to determine something called a sleep window for them, where we determine how much time we want them to spend in bed based on how much sleep they're already getting. Then we employ a list of behavioral strategies to help them with their sleep. There's a few common areas where people might be sleeping poorly, such as spending too much time in bed or oversleeping on the weekends. So these are behavioral strategies that we're going to encourage them to change. And alongside all of this, we're also doing cognitive strategies. There are a lot of beliefs that people have about their sleep that might actually be making it worse and might be increasing their anxiety around sleep, making it harder for them to get to sleep. So we talk about and address those thoughts that they're having and work on modifying them so that they're more helpful.
So with all of your success in this field, can you give us an example of one of your success stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So one patient comes to mind that I worked with who was taking Ambien, and his primary sleep concern was that he was struggling to get to sleep. He found himself tossing and turning for hours at the beginning of the night. So what we did was we started tracking his sleep, and one of the things that I noticed was that he was going to bed at 9 p.m. every night. So I asked him, what's that about? How'd you come up with this bedtime? And he said, well, that's the time my partner goes to bed because she has to get up early for work every morning. And one of the things we discovered was that he was going to bed far too early. And some of the ways in which we discovered that was by doing a circadian rhythm assessment to see what time his body naturally wanted to go to sleep and wake up. And we also looked at childhood history. So we determined that a later bedtime was going to work better for him. Another thing that we did was we looked at what he was doing before bed, and we swapped out him reading news on his phone for him listening to a relaxing podcast on the couch in his living room. So by adjusting his bedtime to a later time and giving himself a different wind down activity, he found that he was able to have much better results. Another thing that we did was we had him stick with a consistent wake time. This patient was sleeping in a lot on the weekends, and that was messing up his sleep during the week where he wasn't able to get to bed. So we had him stick with a earlier consistent wake time on the weekends, so that built up his sleep drive and made him tired enough to get really good restorative sleep during the week.
Wow, it's amazing. What other tips and tricks do you have for patients?
So, there's a lot of things that when we're struggling with sleep, we unwittingly do in order to make our sleep better, that makes it worse. So a really common one is spending long periods of time in bed awake, whether it be at the beginning of the night or during awakenings. I oftentimes hear patients say, well, if I can't sleep, I just sort of toss and turn and try to get back to sleep. I always tell them sleep can't be forced. Sleep is a process that needs to happen naturally. So we take the pressure off patients and encourage them to get out of the bed and go into another room and do a relaxing activity until your body's sleepy signals tell you that it's ready. When we feel our eyes getting heavier, that's a good signal that your body's ready to get back to sleep. There's also a host of others. So one that's been getting a lot of attention in the media these days is the use of electronics and how this can negatively affect our sleep. There's a lot of blue light exposure that people are getting from phones, from laptops, and when we get that blue light exposure in the evening, it's disrupting our melatonin production. Melatonin is the hormone in our brain that makes us sleepy. If we're disrupting that process, we're not going to be as sleepy for when the evening rolls around. A lot of patients share with me that they spend their evening scrolling through social media or catching up on work emails.
We all do that.
We all do that, right? We're all guilty of it. And with the pandemic, we're working later and longer hours than ever before. So we want to create a space where we're limiting those things and giving our bodies enough time to unwind and get ready for bed.
So how does somebody get started with CBTI?
So in order to get started with CBTI, you'll want to find a sleep healthcare professional who's certified in CBTI that you can work with on this. The great thing about it is it can be done in person, but it's equally effective completing it over video, telehealth conferencing. So if you can't find a CBTI provider directly in your area, you can meet with someone over video and it works just as well. A really great resource for finding providers is if you visit the Society of Behavioral Sleep Medicine at behavioralsleep.org.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. The sleep professionals in this video series teamed up with Whole You to spread healthy sleep education across America and were paid for their appearances.